Hello, everybody. This is episode 4 of Talk That Talk with DLab and Fallon. We are excited to have you guys back with us today. Hopefully you all have enjoyed episodes 1 through 3. Been a little bit of a work in progress. We're trying to figure it out, but we are enjoying bringing you guys information about sports and social topics all across the world, and we're going to do the same thing today. We're going to talk a little bit about the NBA bubble. We're going to talk about some voting rights and acts and unfortunate passing aways that we've had over the last day, which is crazy, 2 of our greats. And then we'll also talk a little bit about Garrett for the NFL, his contract, and a little bit about Pat Mahomes as well, who has become the spokesman of the NFL. Let's jump right into our first topic, the NBA bubble and updates. Players have complained about betting and food. Players who have complained are J.R. Smith, Rajon Rondo, Joel Embiid, Troy Daniels, Ben McLemore, Montrezl Harrell, who actually recently left the bubble. It's interesting to hear guys who are staying in what most people would consider 4-star or 5-star resorts with 24-hour access to concierge, meals that are prepared for them, complain about their living situation. But it just shows you that we are living in a very different world than the NBA player lives in on a regular day-to-day basis. They are accustomed to a certain style of life. They're accustomed to living situations that we can't even imagine. Access to cars, access to people, access to the space, and technology that we can't even imagine. So when they stay in what we consider a nice place and we'd be excited to stay, they're complaining. So it's interesting. I can't wait to hear your thoughts on that. J.R. Smith complained about the food on his IG Live, saying, you want an MFing Ferrari to run like a Ferrari because you paid for it as a Ferrari, but you keep gassing it up with MFing Chrysler shit. The most hilarious, like the whole quote is hilarious to me, to be honest. But it's J.R. Smith. Like, we're talking about a guy who gets the rebound and starts dribbling the whole other direction of the court in the finals. He doesn't even realize that he's right by his rim. So to take anything with J.R. Smith, you got to take it with a grain of salt. But the most hilarious part to me is that he's complaining about a Chrysler. He looks at a Chrysler as a bad car. Like that's his baseline for cars. He's talking about a Ferrari and a Chrysler. Like anything below a Chrysler to him is like a waste of time to even talk about. After some of his IG Live footage and complaints, he was told to get off IG Live, which some other players have been told as well, because I'm sure they realize that it's making the NBA players and the association look bad to hear guys complain about these type of living arrangements. And Dwight Howard has used his IG Live to show how he's living in the bubble and kind of continue his relationship. And he's also donated his contract due to Black Lives Matter. So I think he's kind of changed his perception a little bit. I'm proud of him being a guy from Atlanta. So I'm really interested to hear your thoughts on everything I just dropped on you, Fallon.
Yeah, this is a funny set of circumstances. You have these NBA players who you could easily say they live a very privileged lifestyle. They make millions. And the NBA has created this bubble to try and keep the season going. Yep. The NBA players are not in the same situation as these WNBA players. They haven't even started their season. But if they make the decision not to play, they don't get paid. So most of these NBA players have clauses in their contract where a percentage of that money or that salary every year is guaranteed. So they get paid regardless. But I say this is just like a whole aspect of like AAU again, or going to some type of like ABCD camp back in the day for Adidas.
Ooh, you dated yourself at ABCD camp. A lot of people have never heard of ABCD camp.
But just like back in the day where they house you, put you in probably a nice hotel, but you get this banquet style food that's prepared. You have chefs that are cooking for you. So you would think in that aspect, these players would be pretty humble and understand they're in a great situation where the NBA is trying to do as much as possible to protect them and make sure they have the amenities they need. I mean, they got 24-hour concierge service. They have, they can order takeout. They have movie theaters, golf courses, tons of things that they can do and activities to kill their time, because the NBA knows or understands that these players are going to get bored. They have a lot of money. And when they play in their respective cities or they travel, they have a lot of stuff that's accessible to them if they want to make the decision to go out to nightclubs, hang out, or they just want to chill in the room and prepare for the next game. So it's interesting, but it's very funny. J.R. Smith's quote was very funny to me. Just that aspect. I'm glad to see him in the league again. They were telling him to get off of his IG because he was really dogging the food. He was dogging like the linen. He is a
clown,
but he's funny. He's funny to me. I think he brings some entertainment to the whole aspect of this NBA bubble. Like you said, Dwight Howard being from the A, very great to see what he's doing, donating the rest of his salary to the Black Lives Matter movement. And additionally, you know, he's doing on his Instagram page, like putting updates or history lessons to his followers of just like Black history, letting people understand their roots, their ancestry, whether it's his own or just other people he's growing and researching as he continues to try and be an advocate and use his platform in a positive way. So this has been hilarious to me, but I can't wait to see how it progresses. And, you know, the next thing I want to talk about is like players who've been late to the bubble or they've left. We know two players in particular, both being from the Houston Rockets. We got James Harden, who was about 4 or 5 days late from reporting, but he just said he was just late. He had some things to do. It was no reasons of COVID. But I was like, if you're James Harden, I guess you can do whatever you want to do. And he got caught up with a little controversy the other day or yesterday at practice because he had a mask on, which, you know, they want people to do. He's advocating a pro-mask, which is very important. But his was like a pro-police mask. It was represented some type of police organization. So he caught some flack with that on social media, just trying to see what his alliance or where he stands. He said he had no political reasons behind wearing that mask. He just thought it was cool. So, I mean, that's the NBA player's mindset sometimes.
That doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't. But I'm just like, when you see the likes of, like we talked about last episode, Deshaun Jackson, or just some of these players that are just a little bit ignorant to the whole aspect of how things can be maybe viewed insensitively. Not to say we're trying to tell James Harden what type of political affiliations he should have, but he has to be conscious to understand what he's wearing and what he's putting out there because he's on such a huge platform. But moving on from him, you also got Russell Westbrook, who's one of my favorite players in the NBA. And he actually went on his social media platforms and said he tested positive for COVID. So that's why he's late coming to the bubble down in Orlando. He actually has been quarantining. When he's cleared, he will come and meet the team. So at least he's in a position where he didn't test positive in the bubble. And we were talking about with the superstars, would they really tell certain superstars they have to leave? But good, they found out before he left. So he's able to quarantine and then eventually, hopefully, join his team. And then, you know, Zion Williamson, he left, you know, and said it was for a family medical emergency. So he's left the bubble. So that's going to be interesting, especially with this new seeding arrangement that the NBA did for this shortened season to try and make it a little bit more competitive for the Pelicans to try and fight to get that 8th seed so they can make the playoffs, because they really want to see if the Lakers are able to keep the 1 seed, what it's going to look like with the 8th seed Pelicans and a lot of those so-called replacement players that were traded to the Pelicans so the Lakers could get Anthony Davis. So that's going to be an interesting concept. So what are your thoughts about these players either being late to the bubble or having to leave the bubble?
I'm not sure that any of these guys had any issues. Like, you know, obviously I don't live with James Harden. I don't know anyone that knows James Harden. But what I've been hearing was some of the guys, as it got closer to time to get into the bubble, started to realize that this thing is getting real and we're going to be in here for, they said the minimum is 42 days.
Right.
So we're talking about, you know, over 5 weeks.
Right.
You know, almost 8 weeks. Like, this is a long period of time to be away from family, to be away from friends, to only hang out with your teammates. You know, from being a college athlete, if you're away with your teammates for a 5-day road trip, that's like a long period of time when you're just with them. And you actually get to interact with other people at the hotel, when you go out to eat, at the game, you get to speak to other people. Like, they're, for the most part, going to be with just each other because they don't want them spreading, or I guess a better way is catching the disease from anyone else.
Yeah.
So I think as it got closer, the bigger name players took advantage of their status and, you know, came up with different things that you couldn't argue with and ways to stay out of the bubble. And then, you know, obviously Russell Westbrook having COVID, it made complete sense for him. And I think it's 3 players from the Nuggets as well, Jokic being one of them, who had COVID. They want to make sure that those guys test negative. I think they said 2 consecutive times before you bring them into the bubble, which makes complete sense. Zion left for family reasons. Montrezl Harrell left for unknown reasons as well. And we'll get into Montrezl Harrell with some other things later. But it's going to be interesting. It's a long period of time. Everybody's waiting to watch basketball games. The exhibition games start on Wednesday. I think it's going to be awful basketball, relatively speaking to NBA basketball. But I'm still excited to watch it. I just watched the TBT, which I think got better as time went on, and the championship game and the semifinal games were actually really good. So I'm looking forward to seeing what the NBA is going to look like when we get into exhibition game. So let's move on to the bubble is an adult summer camp. Doc Rivers said coaches and players are just trying to live their best Disney life. What a great quote by Doc Rivers, a great guy. Amenities include 24-hour concierge service, game rooms. You talked about it earlier, golf courses, bowling alleys. I mean, this sounds like summer camp, but with all the best amenities that you can ever imagine.
Yeah.
I mean, I want to spend time with my family. I'm sure you want to spend time with your family. But if I couldn't, I would love to have access to a golf course, free food whenever I want to, and tell them however I want to prepare, DJs. I can get haircuts. We got a chaplain. We got mental health. We got yoga. I mean, you got everything that you can imagine. If it's going to be a situation without your family, this is the situation you want to be in. Every team has a liaison to help book outings and handle needs with just one simple click of a button on the app, which everything is on the app now. It just shows you the way technology has gone and how we're moving into the future. We have J.J. Redick, Myers Leonard, and Jordan Clarkson accepting beer chugging challenges via social media. But it just shows you they're big kids. You think that they're, kind of bigger than life, almost superheroes. But then you see them do these type things. That's been one of the good things about the bubble, to see that they're just college kids, basically still college kids who have a lot of money and have an elite talent or an elite skill.
Yeah.
But they're just young and having fun. And then you got JaVale McGee, Kyle Kuzma hitting the Disney water slides. You got a 7-foot guy and a 6'8" guy going down the water slides at Disney. Give me your thoughts on these knuckleheads and what you think about them in the Disney bubble.
Oh man, that sounded like the most fun ever. It reminded me of summertime, going to Whitewater, hitting up, not Six Flags, but like when you stay at a resort or if you go on a cruise, they got movie theaters, they have game rooms, they got a golf course. You can do all this stuff and it's all within your bubble. You don't have to leave. You want to eat, you can eat. If you want to order out, you can still order out. It's just ways that you have to go about doing it. So the NBA, they're trying to set the mold. I mean, they have put the best amenities they could possibly put in this type of situation and to try to make each of their players successful or to keep them happy. They know these are unforeseen times and unforeseen circumstances that are totally out of their control, but they're trying to make the best of this situation and still have a season so their players can continue to play. So I think it's excellent. You see J.J. Redick, you see other likes of players just having a good time as they're in ice tubs, chugging beer, having beer contests, and it's just being passed along. Other players want to accept the challenge. I mean, you even had Kemba Walker, who made a good point in an interview. He said that this is probably the first time he's ever seen LeBron James look like just a normal person who's just able to walk and people aren't running up to him for autographs or asking him stuff. He's like, LeBron's just walking through the lobby like with a teammate or a friend, like, yo, we going to breakfast or we about to go hit up the golf course. So I think that's just awesome to actually put these NBA players in some type of normal atmosphere, like they can relate back to childlike days, to where we said if they played in these AAU tournaments or these competitive amateur tournaments to compete for college scholarships or to put themselves in a position where they could get NBA scouts to take a look at them. So this is just really cool to me. It's funny, but we're going to see how it goes. Hopefully they can be successful because I'm excited on July 30th seeing basketball again.
For sure.
Mm-hmm. So, we'll talk about some of the bad moves that have been in the bubble. We'll say it's been a rumor. We got Montrezl Harrell for the Los Angeles Clippers. It was alleged that he tried to invite an IG model to the bubble, and that's a no-no. So it was kind of funny how this trend spread. You had this IG model who was just basically talking like, yo, I got invited by an NBA player. Never said who the player was, but, was making herself feel extra special on IG.
Of course.
I got invited, and we're not even supposed to have outside people, or they are at the bubble. And then you just had follow-up. People were interested. You had NBA players joking, one saying it was Donovan Mitchell's spider for the Utah Jazz. And then the next thing you know, it was some follower who just said, look, Montrezl Harrell is the only professional athlete that follows her. It must have been him.
Ding, 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 ding.
So he was, he thought it was funny. He was joking about it. And it's like, I was just taking a nap. Next thing you know, I'm all over social media and people are saying that I'm trying to invite people or getting into some type of trouble. I didn't do anything. So I thought that was pretty hilarious, even though it was a rumor, and it could have been a very bad move if Trez really did invite somebody from the outside, especially an Instagram model, to come to the bubble.
We both know Trez invited her. Don't try to. You did it. You gave us all that court talk, all that lawyer talk. We both know Montrez tried to get the girl to come through. She told Blast to put him on Instagram Blast, and he actually liked the attention, so he let it go. We both know what happened.
I think they both did. She liked it too. She was like, I'm getting in trouble. Y'all stop talking about this, but you keep talking about it. So people are going to keep talking about it. But you also had Richaun Holmes. He actually was trying to get some food delivery. So he crossed that line of the bubble where he left the premises just to pick up some Grubhub or something. And then next thing you know, he was also putting on his social media, telling other players like, yo, you can order outside food and go pick it up. And they were like, what? And then the NBA finds out. So he puts his own self on blast. And they're like, you got to quarantine for an extra 10 days. You're going to have to sit your tail up in this hotel room and can't come out so we can protect this bubble. So those are some of the consequences. And if he were to have done this starting July 30th when the games start, he would have been screwed, because they are going to start finding players who violate any type of quarantine provisions or leaving the bubble outside of the bubble without permission. And it's going to be 1% of your game check. So per game, he would have lost about 50 grand if this was July 3rd. So hopefully for his sake, the 10 days, he'll have enough time to sit for quarantine and then eventually get himself back in, whatever testing they have to do, and he'll be ready to go July 30th. Because if he misses that first game, he's going to get docked 50 grand. So what were your thoughts about that? The bad bubble moves. It was pretty interesting.
Well, we already touched on Crazy Montrezl Harrell, who, interestingly enough, all of a sudden left the bubble and nobody kind of knows what happened. Like, we're assuming it has nothing to do. As far as we know, the only rumor that we have as far as someone catching COVID inside the bubble is Michael Beasley, but that has not been confirmed or denied. I'm assuming, and I hate to say this, but I think Michael Beasley just want to go smoke some weed. He was like, "We don't have weed in the bubble. What kind of shit? We don't have weed in the bubble. I gotta go, man." Yeah,
that's another issue that we're gonna see. You know, outside stuff, recreational drugs that players, especially if they come from states where they're able to do it. And Florida is a state where you can do it recreationally now. I think
I'm pretty sure there's some weed in the bubble.
You have to have a medical card, but that's interesting to see how that's gonna play out too. We don't hear anything about the weed or marijuana smoking going on, not yet at least.
They have already said officially multiple times that they are not going to test for recreational type drugs. So if they do some type of drug test, it'll be for performance enhancing drugs. It will not be for marijuana, which is interesting that they said that multiple times, because I think they know it can become an issue at some point.
Yeah, I think that doesn't influence your athletic ability. Smoking weed, it doesn't make you a better athlete. So I think they should not. I don't think they should be tested for that.
So Richaun Holmes, to me, is hilarious that he tells on himself. Who tells on their self? And the crazy part to me is this bubble that's supposed to be so secure. We have everything protected. No one can get in. No one can get out. He walked straight out there and got some food from somebody, and no one knew about it. So is the bubble as secure as it's supposed to be? And if they're not people watching on cameras, I don't understand how this could even. To me, this is unfathomable that this can even happen. That he could walk out, get food, possibly bring the virus inside the bubble, and no one does anything about it, and then tell on himself. And then his mama said, "You're only supposed to leave the bubble to get my food," which some people took and insinuated that he got the food from a young lady, not a Grubhub or a Uber Eats or one of those type things. So again, we just added more rumors and more hoopla to the whole bad bubble moves.
Yeah, that's going to be interesting as it progresses. So we just have to let it play out. God, NBA players.
That's something else. So now next topic, Elena Delle Donne. I think this is the craziest story out of all of the athletic stories that we've heard. All the people that have had COVID, any topics that we've had. To me, this is the most ridiculous one. And I think a major black eye for the WNBA. I don't know if they can come back from what they did, but they need to correct themselves quickly. They've already made some mistakes with Black Lives Matter, and I think this one is horrific. And especially, it's one of the best players in the league. This just doesn't even make any sense. She can actually go play somewhere else and never come back to play in the WNBA and make more money. So I don't even know why you would do this. This makes no sense. So she's a decorated basketball player who is reigning league MVP and WNBA champion from the Washington Mystic. Anyone who doesn't know Elena Delle Donne, she played at Delaware. Fortunately for me, I was at Georgia State when she was at Delaware. We were in the same conference, the CAA at that moment. So I got to watch her play in person twice. And she had 40 plus both times I watched her play. Like her numbers, like she's all the hype. She lives up to every single bit of the hype.
Oh, she's excellent.
She shot like 40 from three, over 50 from the field, and like 94 something from the free throw line. Like it was a joke watching her play. Like it was literally like watching a video game. She was just way better than everybody else. She's been denied by WNBA doctors for medical exempt clearance this season due to COVID-19, and she has Lyme disease. So when I give you some details about Lyme disease and the things that she has to go through every day, you'll understand how ridiculous this is. The condition makes her immunocompromised, which means that the part of what Lyme disease does, it debilitates her immune system. The common cold sent her immune system spiraling into a serious relapse. The common cold. Yeah. We obviously know that COVID is much worse than the common cold. Her concerns, impossible to ensure that COVID-19 will not enter WNBA bubble. Florida cases are going up and hospitalization is going up. Everybody knows that. She was scared and her personal physician thought it was too risky. Her personal physician wrote a letter about her history of treatment and their concerns, and Mystic team doctor wrote a letter on behalf of her saying that the diagnosis and treatment should be deferred to a personal physician for guidance. The WNBA panel of doctors, who is that, first of all? Because from their decision, this doesn't even make any sense that they're real doctors. I think this is just WNBA brass that just said we want her to play because we want people to watch because she's one of the best players. Without speaking to Delle Donne or her doctors, they denied her health exemption. Lyme disease is an inflammatory disease characterized at first by rash, headache, fever, and chills, and later by possible arthritis and neurological and cardiac disorders, which we know any cardiac issues, any respiratory issues, COVID seems to attack those people. It's caused by bacteria that are transmitted by infected ticks. Main concerns for an athlete would be cardiac disorders, joint pain, stiffness, swelling, and weakness. She takes 64 pills a day. 64 pills every single day. So everybody knows it's a documented disease. She's not making this up not to play. She probably really wants to play, but it just doesn't make any sense. She believes that the long-term taking this many pills is just straight up bad for you. She says it's never ending, exhausting. It's a miserable cycle. She's been dealing with this disease for over a decade. The good thing about this is the Mystics will pay her full salary regardless if the NBA plays, if she plays or doesn't pay. I guess they say, we don't care what the WNBA say. We respect you. We love you. You're our best player. We're going to pay you regardless. We're sorry for what they're doing. We're just going to take care of you. WNBA players do not make as much as NBA players, obviously. It comes down to risk your health or be forced to play and earn a paycheck. Give me your thoughts, Val. This whole thing is crazy to me. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's insane. When you got Elena Delle Donne, I mean, she is the MVP of the league. She won it last year. She won the WNBA championship. She was a huge acquisition when the Washington Mystics, they were able to get her about a season or two ago from the Chicago Sky. So she is the epitome of the best WNBA player you have in the league right now. She's like 6'4", 6'5", can shoot the three, take you off the dribble. She's the Dirk Nowitzki of women's basketball. That's just to put it blank. But it's just sad to see how long how hard she's had to fight with this. I mean, she's had this Lyme disease for over a decade where she's been dealing with it and still been able to play basketball at a high level. But she has these moments and she understands that if she still wants to play this sport at a high level, she takes 64 pills a day, which she has said that she knows this isn't healthy at all. You can't take this amount of drugs for your entire life and then think your body can sustain it. So, she had her personal physician. She had concerns. She said, going into this bubble, you can't really ensure that COVID-19 is not going to enter the bubble, which she is right. She talked to her physicians and she was concerned, well, what if she got it? The numbers in Florida spiking up as we continue to see, and the hospitalization is going up. And you don't want to be in a hospital with other people with COVID. It's usually a good chance you'll get COVID. Exactly. So I am with her on these concerns. I applaud the Washington Mystic deciding to go ahead and pay her salary anyway. They know where their bread is buttered. They know she is the best player on that roster, and they want to keep her for a very long time. So they're going to appease their best player any way possible. And they probably understand it. Like, this is serious. She's having to make a decision still to say, do I still want to play? I want to support my teammates. I want to be there for them and my fans, and then see if we can go and win another WNBA championship. Mm-hmm. Or do I just sit this out because I have to be worried about my own health concerns and my family? I mean, she's married. She has a wife. I don't think she has any kids yet, but it's people that obviously love and care about her well-being and want to see her on this earth for a very long time. So I understand the importance of it. I understand her concerns. It's a tough decision she's going to have to make in the coming weeks, but I'm just going to see how this plays out and continue to watch the narrative. And, a shame on the WNBA and their doctors telling her in this type of pandemic that she has to play. I don't like that at all. So good for her standing up for herself, making a note, even penning an open letter so her fans can understand that she's just not out here saying this because she doesn't want to play. It's some huge safety concerns that she has for her health. So I applaud Elena Delle Donne for doing this and speaking out.
Me too. Good job, Elena.
Yeah. So on to the next topic. This is an important one. We got early voting, at least in Georgia, on July 20th, which is next week. And we got to let people know where they need to vote. Just to start this, we got a shout out. We lost two titans in the civil rights movement, in C.T. Vivian. He passed away earlier yesterday morning. And then late evening yesterday, we lost Congressman John Lewis. Yeah. Both, cornerstones in just Atlanta and the civil rights movement. Both worked very closely with Dr. King. And, C.T. Vivian was 95 years old. That's a long life. You hate to see him go, but he lived a long life. But with Congressman Lewis, I mean, he was 80 and, he just seemed like that titan that was going to be here forever. Mm-hmm. Still so active in the community. When I go on my timeline for Instagram, you just saw how many people in the community he met or saw. Everybody had a picture with him, and that's amazing.
Crazy.
You don't see that with politicians. Like, he was so relatable. So
me and you both had a picture with him, which I think is crazy.
Was awesome. So I won't get into that whole story. It's on my IG page, Facebook too. But RIP C.T. Vivian and RIP Congressman Lewis. You'll be deeply missed. But going back, so I want to give some important information. Y'all listen up. The Georgia general primary, we have some key runoffs in this state, especially in the county of Fulton County. For district attorney, we have a Superior Court judge seat. That's a runoff, as well as the sheriff for the Fulton County Jail. So, the election is going to be on August the 11th of 2020. Voter registration deadline has already ended for this election. So if you did not meet the deadline by July 13th, unfortunately, you can't vote for this election. But early voting starts July 20th and it ends on August 7th. So you have that time frame. And the deadline to request an absentee ballot, we know that was critical during the last election we had in early June, is August 7th. That's the last day that you can request one. And the deadline to submit your absentee ballot, if you don't feel comfortable going to the polls, which we totally understand, is August the 11th. So make sure you do that. And I think for the Georgia general election, that's the federal election that's going to happen in November. So that's where you vote for president. That's where you vote for your senators that'll be in Washington, as well as your congressmen and other representatives. That election is November 3rd, 2020. Voter registration deadline. So if you did not make it for the Georgia general primary I just read to you, you still have time to register to vote for this election. And that deadline is Monday, October the 5th. Early voting will be between October 12th, 2020 and October 30th, 2020. And the deadline to request an absentee ballot is Friday, October 30th. Deadline to return completed absentee ballots is Monday, November 2nd. So the day before this election. Very important. Make sure you try to remember these numbers. But if you forget, like I know I do all the time, you can go to rockthevote.org. rockthevote.org. I went to that website, very informative. It gives you any information you need to know about early voting, where to go by your state. So you just click in your state and it gives you all your dates for any upcoming elections. And then it also has a link to show you where you can go to your local states to see where your polling stations or where your polling offices are. So you can see where you need to go for early voting. or you can see where you just need to go, where you generally go to vote, in your counties and wherever you're registered or you're a resident. So you just basically put in your name, you put in your county, and you put in your date of birth, and it pops up. It even tells you if you're a registered voter or not and what you need to do to see about registering. But I think this is interesting. The State Farm Arena, no NBA going on right now. The Hawks didn't make it to the bubble, unfortunately. But they're trying to do something.
They didn't belong in the bubble, Fallon. Come on.
Oh, man, we got to always represent the A. But they decided to be proactive. And since they saw so much that was going on during the early June Georgia primary election with the issues with people going to vote, absentee ballots, long lines, not even getting a chance to vote, these new ballot systems where you got to scan your ballot. Some people were confused by that. Usually you just put your card in the machine, you click your people you select, then you give your card to whoever is working the poll. Yeah. But now you had to print the ballot and you scanned it in a machine because they're trying to take these extra precautions, especially after the 2018 election for governor here and how that was just a hot mess dealing with Governor Kemp. But in this situation, State Farm Arena is stepping up. They're going to try this, so they hopefully have it for the November 3rd general election. And it's going to be 100 polling stations located, and they're going to be separated 10 feet apart for social distancing protocols with the CDC. So they're trying to step up and help with trying to give people a place to vote. What better place? The MARTA station, you can be dropped off right there at State Farm Arena, so you don't have to drive. And they are going to have free parking during the hours or during the day of voting, so you don't have to pay to park.
That was my next question. What was parking going to be? All right, great.
Yes. So that's going to be the largest. It is the largest polling location that we've ever had during an election in the state of Georgia. So I just think that's freaking awesome. Right. They're going to see how this first run goes with it on August 11th. And if it goes well, we're going to see more polling stations in that location for November 3rd, which is a huge election for the national election. So y'all pay attention. Make sure y'all go to rockthevote.org and go to that website so you can get as much information as you need for voting for this season.
This is probably one of the most important elections that we've had, definitely in our lifetime.
Right.
And we try not to get too politically affiliated and give our opinions on here, even though we do. But we try not to be all the way out right. But we're in a situation where from the top, our administration did not handle this pandemic well. And anyone who thinks that the administration handled the pandemic well is fooling themselves. You can look at the numbers. You can look at what's going on in other countries. Other countries are full-fledged back in business like nothing happened. I mean, we have countries who have 10 deaths. We have countries that have 300 deaths. We are quadrupled or quintupled. What you got to make up a word for how many deaths we have versus everyone else.
Yeah, we're killing the game.
We are, and then we have killing the game. What a pun! And then we also have so much misinformation that we have people who I have a neighbor who I love. I think he's a great guy. He looked at me eye to eye contact and told me that the numbers are inflated. This thing is a hoax. I personally know people who are getting COVID. I personally know people who have passed away from COVID. This thing is not a hoax. It's the real deal. We have to wear a mask. We have to socially distance. If we had a mass test earlier, prior to all this, and we could have got it under control earlier and did some contact tracing and not brought in people from Europe. We blame China, but really, if you really go back to the heat of the battle, it came in through New York, through people who came from Europe. Yeah. So if we had to handle the beginning part a lot better, then we wouldn't be in the situation we're in now. So this is I say all that to say, this is a very important election for national, but it's also a very important election for your local elections with everything that we're trying to figure out with police departments, police enforcement, just different laws, different rules. You need to do your research this year, make decisions based on research of people who have the same ideology as you so that we can change a lot of the systematic racism and a lot of the cultural issues that we have. Just try to control. All you can do is control what you can control, and that's your small portion of the earth. And also to vote to get this out of office. All right, so that's enough. I had to get off of my soapbox on that one. I apologize.
Just one more thing. Also, just for Georgia, if you want to see where your polling locations are, just go to Georgia My Voter page, abbreviation MVP. If you Google that, Georgia My Voter page, that's where you can put in your information, and it'll tell you exactly where you need to go and all of your resources. And just one more thing about voting, I wanted to hit on this. Criminal felon, it tells you about convicted felons. As an attorney, I get this question all the time where clients are concerned, or if they want to vote, when are their voting rights restored? And that's something that's very critical. Your voting rights in Georgia are restored once you complete your sentence, whatever felony sentence, if that is prison time, if that's parole, probation, your sentence has to be completed, and then your right to vote is restored. So that never goes away. You just have to complete your sentence. If you have misdemeanor convictions, that does not matter. You still can register to vote. So just make sure you go to My Georgia voter page and get all the information you need about voting.
Great information, Fallon. We appreciate it.
Yeah.
So let's go into a lighter note. Myles Garrett got a monumental contract, and we can't speak about monumental contracts without touching base on Pat Mahomes' $450 million contract over the course of 10 years. And I'm a former athlete who also coached, and I am in the minority of thinking that athletes get paid too much, because the rebuttal I get is, well, owners are making a lot more money than athletes, which I agree.
Right.
But for one person to make $450 million over 10 years, that's an average of $45 million a year, and a ton of it's guaranteed. I don't know the exact numbers, but it's 300 some odd million is guaranteed. I don't care how good you are. We're talking about a guy who's playing sports. They're not changing the world. They're not discovering cures for cancer. We have so many important and serious things that are out here that I love Pat Mahomes, that I actually thought they were going to win the Super Bowl. And if I was a gambling man, which I should have been, I would have bet on the Kansas City Chiefs, because I just thought Pat Mahomes was too good and he'd find a way to win. But I think that's too much money for anyone. And what it's doing is it's saturating the market. So now the next quarterback's going to want $45 million. The next quarterback's going to win $50 million. I mean, we're just like, when are the numbers going to die? Like, the numbers
they're going to want, but they ain't no Patty Mahomes. So you can put some numbers.
They're not.
And Super Bowl MVP and champion in his first 3 seasons. So I don't know too many that's done that.
He's going to win some more too, but it's still too much money. I mean, there should be a cap. Like $25 million, like that's a lot of money. Like we should nobody should get paid more than $25 million to play any sport. That's just my personal opinion. But again, I get on my soapbox. Myles Garrett, he's the #1 overall pick, 2017 for the Cleveland Browns. He signed a 5-year, $125 million contract, which is a lot of money. $100 million of it is guaranteed. He becomes the 6th player with $100 million guaranteed, first ever defensive player. So it's a huge deal for the defensive side of the ball. And believe me when I tell you that all the agents and all the defensive players had this circled. And they said, all right, so you gave Myles 100. Now it's time for me to get my 100. They're going to be trying to get similar stats, similar numbers, similar win usage, win percentage, so that they can get their $100 million as well. Other players included Pat Mahomes, who we just discussed, Jared Goff, Carson Wentz, Russell Wilson, Matt Ryan. All those guys are quarterbacks. So for a defensive lineman to get what quarterbacks have gotten, even though the quarterbacks got a little bit more, 125, even Matt Ryan.
Yeah, no defensive players ever gotten that.
I'll try. I can't talk about Matt Ryan. We don't have enough time. I can't do Matt Ryan right now. In 37 games, Garrett has recorded 104 total tackles, 30.5 sacks, and 6 forced fumbles. His contract puts him past Khalil Mack, who a lot of people think is the best defensive player in the game, and totally revamped and changed the Chicago Bears last year. He'll be making $25 million annually, served 6-game suspension, so he's controversial. A lot of people know him, and really the reason I know him is because of his 6-game suspension after hitting Mason Rudolph with his own helmet in 2019 and saying that Mason Rudolph yelled a racial slur at him, even though 2 offensive linemen were in the vicinity, and there was at least 1 defensive player kind of in the vicinity, and no one else heard this racial slur that he's claiming that Mason Rudolph yelled at him. Mason Rudolph obviously denies the claim. He thinks it's ridiculous that we're even talking about this. There's no way I had time to yell a racial slur in the heat of the battle. And then for him to hit me with his helmet was like hit me with my own helmet was crazy anyway. But that's a topic for another show. But it's just huge for a defensive player to get over $100 million, especially guaranteed. And I'm interested to hear your thoughts on how this is probably going to change the game moving forward.
Well, I mean, this kid is a freak of nature. He was the #1 overall pick. it's rare you see defensive players go number 1 overall, but he did in 2017. And he's put in numbers. He's put in work. I mean, I can't even imagine. He was on his way to probably a Pro Bowl year if he didn't have to serve that 6-game suspension towards the end after he hit Mason Rudolph upside his head with his own helmet. But that
is there a reason that you laugh when you said upside his old head? Is that funny to you? They got hit with the helmet?
Nah, that was dangerous. It wasn't funny, but when I think about it,
that could have went bad.
It was very dangerous. But football is a dangerous sport in the heat of the moment. And then off the field, you've never seen anything bad about this kid. You know, he's very intelligent, you know, loves to read. It's kind of like a scholar a bit and kind of sticks to himself. So, you know, on the field, you pay these men to be crazy and obnoxious and to knock people's heads off. And in the heat of that moment, like you said, is nobody been to confirm or really deny whether or not Mason Rudolph used that racial slur on the field towards Myles Garrett. But that's what he's saying he heard, and that's why he reacted. So sometimes I would say you got to give people the benefit of the doubt until they show you something different. But he says he sees this as a small bump in the road. Some people may see it as a mountain, but obviously the Cleveland Browns, which we'll see what happens of how successful they are if the season goes on this season. But they decided to keep him and paid him a lot of money, made him the richest defensive player ever in the league. So this is important. I think it's going to be key to see how it plays out if he has any other run-ins with the league or, you know, outside of playing football. But I think this is awesome. I think this kid's deserving. Hopefully he will earn every bit of this guaranteed money. Well, it's guaranteed. You don't see that too often in the NFL, so that's very important. And hopefully he's successful moving forward and he can learn from that mistake because it was an awful mistake. It looked horrible on television, but it is football. You're telling people to knock people's heads off, and then you want to be act a certain way when you see him rip a helmet off and knock a quarterback upside the head because they always want to protect the quarterback. If he had done that to another defensive end, I don't know if it would have gotten as much controversy, but it happened. He's moving forward, and he got paid.
Interesting perspective. We're running out of time, so I can't rebuttal like I would like to. Let's go to the last portion of our show where we always try to support a local black business or a black business in general nationally. This week, we're going to support 2 Commas Clothing. It's solely owned by Wallace Prather. It was established in 2014 from an idea that regardless of your occupation or profession, the goal is to make $1 million. Ergo 2 commas. And it says, the quote is, "I must admit it feels good to inspire through fashion and use the platform for positivity," which is a great quote. And he's really done that. He's done a lot of great things in the community, a local guy who I've known for a long time, and has really grown a brand surprisingly to do very well. And I'm happy for him and proud of him. Please go support him at his IG and Twitter is at 2 Commas Clothing. That's the number 2 COMMASCLOTHING. And the website is www.2commasclothing.com, spelled exactly the same way. And so I want to definitely give that shout out. We had a great show this week. We discussed a lot of things. Looking forward to watch some NBA basketball this week, and we'll probably, I'm sure, touch on how good or bad that looked in any other bubble situations and social issues like we always do. Great show, Fallon. I appreciate it, and hopefully you enjoyed it, and hopefully our viewers enjoyed it as well. Please keep supporting us. Follow us on all of our social media. Fallon, can you give us your social media, please, and the social media for Talk That Talk?
Yeah, we got Future Stokey for me, my personal handle, and then for the show is Talk That Talk FD on IG. And we're on every platform right now. We're trying to put ourselves out there. We're on YouTube. You can view us there. You can listen to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Google Podcasts. So check it out. Subscribe. We need subscribers. Listen and tune in next week. We're going to hit you with some more good stuff.
Subscribe. My local, my personal handle is Coach DLab, at Coach DLab, and then also D_lab work if you want to get some clothing as well. You know, I always got to shout out myself. Again, enjoyed it. Have a great week. Be safe. Wear your mask. Social distance. Stay healthy. Prayers up to our 2 rested kings. And we love you guys. Look forward to seeing you guys next week.